foggy night, shadows creeping slow, whispers in the wind, where Johnny go? Blood on the hay, pitchfork gleam, midnight moon, a witness to a scream, barn doors creaking, secrets kept tight. Old man Joe seen a deadly sight, no justice found, just a broken plow, crows peck the ground, dead man's vow. Murder in the meadow, lies thick as dust, promises shattered, betrayed by trust, chaos in the cornfields.
Jamie here with Country Diggers. Today we're going to do a murder ballad and history of Jubilee Jim Fisk. Alright, I'll be reading from the Bloody Century True Tales of Murder in 19th Century America by Robert Wilhelm. He also does the Murder by Gaslight website. And I'll be singing Jim Fisk, or He Never Went Back on the Poor, is either name song. And this one is by Ronald Campbell. And the album is on The Hand That Holds the Bread, Songs of Progress and Protest in the Gilded Age, 1865 to 1893. So stay tuned. If you'll listen a while, I'll sing you a song about this glorious land of the free, and the difference I'll show twixt the rich and the poor in a trial by jury. You see, if you've plenty of stamps, you can hold up your head and walk out from your own prison door. But they'll hang you up high if you've no friends or gold. Let the rich go, but hang up the poor. In the trials for murder we've had nowadays, the rich ones get off swift and sure, while they've thousands to pay to the jury and judge. You can bet they'll go back on the poor. Let me speak of a man who's now dead in his grave, a good man as ever was born. Jim Fisk he was called, and his money he gave to the outcast, the poor and forlorn. We all know he loved both women and wine, but his heart it was right, I am sure. Though he lived like a prince in the palace so fine, yet he never went back on the poor. If a man was in trouble, Fisk helped him along to drive the grim wolf from the door. He strove to do right, though he may have done wrong, but he never went back on the poor. Jim Fisk was a man who wore his heart on his sleeve. No matter what people would say, he did all his deeds, both both the good and the bad, in the broad open light of the day. With his guard, he's six in his hand, with his grand six in his hand, on the beach at Long Branch, he cut a big dash to be sure. But Chicago's great fire showed the world that Jim Fisk, with his wealth, still remembered the poor. When the telegram came that the homeless that night were starving to death slow but sure, his lightning express manned by noble Jim Fisk flew to feed all her hungry and poor. Now what do you think of this trial of Stokes, who murdered this friend of the poor? When such men get free, is there anyone safe if they step from outside of their door? Is there one law for the poor and one for the rich? It seems so, at least so I say. If they hang up the poor, why damn it, the rich ought to swing up the very same day. Same way. Don't show any favor to friend or to foe, the beggar or prince at his door. The big millionaire you must hang up also, but never go back on the poor. Oh, shame on this land of the free and the brave, when such blights as this meet our eye. The poor in their prisons and treated like slaves, while the rich in their cells they live high. A poor devil crazy with drink they will hang for a murder he didn't intend. But a wealthy assassin with political friends gets off for his money to spend. But if things go on this way, we'll stand it no more. The people will rise up in bands. A vigilance committee will raise on our shore and take the law in our own hands. Well, that renaissance for today too, don't it? What do you know? History repeating itself. If we don't learn from our history, we repeat it. All right, this song can be found in George Malcolm Law's. It's number F18-Jim Fisk, 1956. George Malcolm Laws was a scholar of traditional British and American folk songs. All right, now on to the story. The Fisk assassination. Jubilee Jim Fisk was the consummate Gilded Age robber baron. Together with his partner Jay Gould, Fisk managed to wrest the Erie Railroad from Cornelius Vanderbilt, and by attempting to corner the gold market, triggered the 1869 financial panic known as Black Friday. But unlike his dour partner, Jim Fisk lived a personal life as large and extravagant as his business dealings. Everything he had or did had to be the biggest and the best. So when Fisk cheated on his wife, it was with the most beautiful woman in America. When their relationship turned scandalous, it was an epic scandal, filled with blackmail, courtroom drama, and finally murder. Date, January 6th, 1872. Location, New York, New York. Victim, James Fisk, Jr. Cause of death, gunshot. Accused, Edward S. Stokes. The life of James Fisk, Jr. is a true American success story. He was born in a small Vermont town in 1835 and quit school at 12 to assist his father as a traveling peddler, selling housewares and notions. At 15, he left that occupation to join Van Amberg's Mammoth Circus and Menage. At 18, he left the circus and applied the showmanship he had learned to the peddling business, and by age 21, he was running 5 wagons throughout New England. He made his first fortune working for Jordan Marsh, providing textiles to the Army during the Civil War. Then he discovered the stock market. He learned the tricks of the trade from Daniel Drew, who was a master at manipulating stock prices. Fisk teamed up with Drew and Jay Gould for the Erie War, a fight to keep Cornelius Vanderbilt from gaining control of the Erie Railroad. Fisk and his partners won by continually issuing fraudulent Erie stock unbeknownst to Vanderbilt, and until Vanderbilt finally conceded. The Erie Railroad became the center of Fisk operations. In 1867, while deeply involved in the Erie War, Jim Fisk met the woman who would change his life. While on a visit to the notorious Manhattan bordello of Annie Wood, he was introduced to Helen Josie Mansfield. She was an unemployed actress, a friend of Miss Wood, and clearly not one of her prostitutes. At the time, Josie only owned one passable dress, and her rent was hopelessly overdue. Though Jim Fisk had a wife back in Vermont, he was smitten by the poor girl and was pleased to pay her rent and provide her with finery. Josie Mansfield was considered extraordinarily beautiful, a fact that she discovered early in life and had always used to her advantage. As one historian put it, perhaps a colder disgrace to her sex has never helped to ruin men since the world began. She was born in Boston, but when she was around 10 years old, the family moved to Stockton, California. Soon after, her father was killed in a duel over a political matter, and her mother remarried a man named Warren. As Josie was growing up, she earned the reputation as an incorrigible flirt. She caught the eye of a middle-aged attorney named D.W. Purley, and Warren had to chase him away twice with a pistol in his hand. The matter became something of a scandal, but Josie would later say she was being used by her parents in a blackmail plot. She married a wandering actor named Frank Lawler. The marriage had been Josie's idea, Lawler said. Finally, I did marry her to save her from the evil influence of her own parents, he said. The couple drifted east, but Josie began to stray. They divorced after 2 years. After meeting Jim Fisk, Josie gave up any attempt at acting. By 1870, she was living in a 4-story house on 24th Street that Jim had given her, along with an extensive wardrobe, fine jewelry, and virtually anything else she wanted. The summer of 1869, Fisk met Edward S. Ned Stokes. Stokes was a handsome, athletic young man from a good family, but it was his less attractive side that Fisk was drawn to. Stokes was a gambler and a horseman who divided his time between racetracks and saloons. He was a flashy dresser who liked to be the center of attention, much like Jim Fisk himself, except that Stokes spent money at a faster rate than he could make it. Stokes' mother owned an oil refinery in Brooklyn that had been closed for several years. Fisk and Stokes formed a company to reopen it, with Fisk providing the capital and discounted freight rates on the Erie Railroad for transferring oil. Stokes treated the treasury as his personal account. On New Year's Day, 1870, Josie Mansfield hosted an open house with an ample punch bowl, and people were coming and going all day. Fisk invited Ned Stokes to join him at the party, and there introduced him to Josie. As they chatted around the punch bowl, people commented on what a handsome couple Josie and Ned made. At the time, it pleased Fisk to see them together, his sweetheart and his bosom friend. Not long after that, Ned Stokes began paying call on Josie Mansfield, and the relationship soon became a full-blown love affair. When Fisk found out, he sent a letter to Josie to find out where matters stood. She responded by accusing him of seeing actresses behind her back, a rumor that was circulating in Manhattan at the time. This initiated a long series of letters between him and Jim and Josie, that were on both sides, sometimes accusatory, sometimes loving. Fisk confronted Stokes, asking him to leave Josie alone. "Ask me anything else, Jim," he replied. "Anything else in the world, I'll do. But I can't keep away from Josie. I love her, and she loves me." Fisk, though, thought he could handle the matter as if it were a business deal. He proposed they ask Josie to settle things once and for all by deciding which of them she wanted. Josie's response was, "I don't see why we can't all three be friends." To which Jim replied, "No, Josie, it won't do. You can't run two engines on the same track in contrary directions at the same time." As far as Fisk was concerned, Josie had chosen Ned Stokes. But Josie continued to ask Fisk for money. She claimed that he had told her he was holding $25,000 in trust for her, and she wanted it all. He refused this request, but agreed to pay any bills incurred up until 5 minutes to 11 o'clock 3 weeks prior, the time she had formally refused him. When he received her bills, some had been obviously backdated. He paid them anyway, and several after. But his relationship with Josie had taken a legalistic turn. Fisk and Stokes began to fight over the refinery. Stokes demanded $200,000 or he would release Fisk's letters to Josie to the press. Fisk refused, though he desperately wanted the letters back. The refinery matter went to arbitration, and Stokes surrendering his stock for $15,000 in addition to the money he had already stolen. As part of the settlement, Fisk's attorney took custody of the letters. The $15,000 did not last Ned Stokes very long, and he sued Fisk for $200,000 in refinery profits. He claimed he was owed. He also requested the letters back, declaring they would prove his claim. The Fisk-Mansfield letters were now the talk of the town. The press speculated that they were not merely love letters, but contained evidence of Fisk's shady business practices. Fisk's friends, who knew the letters would do no more damage than already had been done, tried to persuade him to publish the letters himself and defuse Stokes' threats. Fisk came close to agreeing, but refused, not wanting his soul splashed across the daily newspaper. The judge dismissed Stokes' claim and stated that the status of the letters had been decided. After the verdict, Stokes was drowning his sorrows at Delmonico's when he heard the follow-up news. Fisk had filed a suit of his own charging Stokes and Mansfield with blackmail. It was more than Ned Stokes could stand, and he went looking for Fisk. He learned that Fisk was on his way to Grand Central Hotel, and he knew that Stokes always entered by the ladies' entrance. So Stokes went in first and waited on the second-floor landing. When he heard Fisk climbing up the stairs, Stokes started down, saying, "Now I've got you." Stokes fired 2 shots at Fisk with a Colt pistol, one to the abdomen and one to the left arm. Stokes tried to flee, but was captured. Fisk lived long enough to identify his killer before dying from the abdominal wound. Jim Fisk was 36 years old. The trials, June 19th, 1872, December 18th, 1872, and October 6th, 1873. Awaiting trial, Stokes was put on murderer's row in Manhattan's Tombs prison. At the time, for men of means, prison meant confinement, but not necessarily hardship. A prisoner could have whatever lifestyle he could afford. Stokes had a carpet on the floor, had his meals brought in from Delmonico's, and had bottles of scented water for bathing. He met with reporters wearing a ruffled shirt with diamond studs. At his trial, Stokes' defense was multi-pronged. He claimed by turns that he had shot out of self-defense, that he had been driven insane by Fisk's persecution, that the doctor's extensive probing had done more damage than his bullets, or that Fisk was killed by the morphine given to him by the doctors. The trial resulted in a hung jury. At least one juror was suspected of being bribed. At his second trial, Stokes was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to be hanged, but the verdict was overturned on appeal. In his third trial, Stokes was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years at Sing Sing prison. Had Stokes been an illiterate laborer, Edmund Stedman commented, he would have dangled in a noose 2 months earlier. I agree with that. The verdicts hung jury guilty of first-degree murder, which, remember, first-degree murder is premeditated. But it was overturned on appeal, guilty of manslaughter. I don't know, that seems first-degree murder to me. But anyway, the aftermath. Jubilee Jim Fisk lay in state for a day at the Grand Opera House, a theater that he had owned and managed. More than 20,000 people passed by to pay their respects, and more than 100,000 more stood in the street. The body was taken by train to Brattleboro, Vermont. At every station, crowds gathered to watch the train go by. In Brattleboro, he lay in state one more day before being lowered into the ground. Jim Fisk's flamboyant personality was sadly missed in New York. Though in life his business practices and personal morals had been criticized from pulpit and podium, and his market manipulations had directly or indirectly harmed much of the population. Fisk was remembered at his death for his acts of charity, most notably sending a trainload of supplies to the victims of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. In song and story, Jim Fisk became a lovable rogue and a friend to the working man. 39 letters from Jim Fisk to Josie Mansfield were published in the New York Herald 1 week after Jim Fisk's death. To the dismay of scandalmongers, they contain no insight into his business dealings, just evidence of his love for Josie and his jealousy of Ned Stokes. Josie Mansfield left New York for Paris, France, where she married Robert L. Reed, an expatriate American lawyer. When he died, she moved to Boston. Then in 1899, in failing health, to Philadelphia to live with her sister. In 1909, in dire poverty, she moved with a brother to Watertown, South Dakota. Somehow she returned to Paris, where she lived for many years. Josie died in 1931 at the American Hospital in Paris. Well, hope you enjoyed that, and see you later.